Yes, before we get into this podcast, I'd like to acknowledge that I know most people watch All American because they want to see good looking shirtless people or just a very attractive cast all around. It's still a great show, and I'd like to stand up for it in that regard before we get into this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Off the Deep in the show, where we take a deep dive into pretty much anything we can get our hands on. I'm your host, Arshdeep, and this is another terrific TV Tuesday episode. Today we'll be doing All American Season 1. Let's get into it. Now, All American Season 1... let's start with the premise of the show. The story follows Spencer James, played by Daniel Ezra, who's an aspiring football player in a rough neighborhood of Crenshaw. Taye Diggs' character of Billy Baker gives his kids a chance, scoops him away to Beverly Hills to play football for a much more well-funded school, and it comes with a bunch of ups and downs. He moves into the family's home, and that family, obviously, Billy Baker's son, who's played by Michael Evans Bailing. Jordan Baker is the QB of that team, and there's a bunch of tension there because they're both kind of, a prodigy versus, it's like, adopted son versus regular son, things like that. Cody Christian, Asher Adams, plays another dimension to that as well, where he's kind of in their friend group and they all kind of don't get along. Long story short, there's just a lot of tension in the first little bit, and pretty much the premise of the show is he has to assimilate into this culture of the Beverly Hills lifestyle, as well as playing for this team in Beverly Hills, while also simultaneously staying true to who he is and being there for his neighborhood of Crenshaw and his community in Crenshaw. Now, this show's trajectory in the first season, as I'll probably call this point of the review's trajectory, is about establishing the team. It's about establishing who our main players are. Obviously, that's what you do in a good show. As the first season is a lot about putting down motivations for characters, putting them in that kind of, I like to call it the beta state, where you're kind of still feeling them out as people. You don't really know exactly what they're up to all the time, but you know who they are deep down, and you know what they mean. And I think this show does a good job of doing that very, very well. But obviously, we'll get into that in a little bit. And I think another thing to remember here is I'm not going to cover every single dilemma and thing that pops up in the show. That's not what these reviews are for. And I would probably die if I attempted to name every single relationship a character has in the show, because that's one thing this show does. It keeps everything very, very interconnected. Everything is connected to one another, and I think that's really, really difficult to dissect, but it makes it such a fun watch to see like one character's world connected to these three characters, and then those three characters connected to another three characters. The love triangles, the love trapezoids, the love pentagons in the show are just off the charts, and that's one thing I really, really love about the show. So let's get into things that I love about the show, because obviously there's a lot to be said. Obviously, all the attractive people. I would be lying if I said this wasn't one of the most attractive casts in television. I think anywhere from the adults all the way down to the people who are supposedly playing high school students in this, obviously they're not actually high schoolers, are very, very attractive. And I gotta give the CW credit where credit is due. It's obviously very easy to market a show like this in terms of just sex appeal on screen, and that's one thing the show does really well. So great job for the marketing team, I guess. Another thing the show does really well is it dismantles the CW diversity. I cannot tell you. I've been watching CW shows for a long time. I was an Arrow fan for a long time. I watched Flash for 5 or 6 seasons. I've been on the CW. I've seen a few of the different shows here and there, and they're always victim to something I like to call the CW diversity, which is a predominantly white cast, and then a random ethnic character thrown in just for the sake of being there. And it's always like that. But I think this show, in addition to shows like Jane the Virgin, have done a good job of kind of stepping away from that and trying to cast people of color as well as people of different ethnic backgrounds and put their stories on the limelight, because I will admit sometimes all the stories on the CW feel very just like conflict driven. There's never any internal struggle, which no offense, people of color in this country have seen a lot more of, and I think that really shows on this show too. And that kind of brings me into the third thing that I love about the show, which is it puts characters into messy situations, but not gritty ones, and I like that. I like that a lot. Characters get into these situations, and sometimes it's all love triangle and that dimension there, and that's obviously fine. But I love the other place it puts us in. Whether it's the Olivia Baker character, who's amazingly played by Samantha Logan, and her dealing with, spoiler warning right now, I'm going to start putting the spoiler warnings in the beginning, but spoiler warning moving forward for the rest of this podcast. Whether it's the Olivia Baker character kind of getting into her addiction and her lifestyle, living high end and being ignored by her family, which I think is very internally driven and very environmentally driven, as well as with Spencer and Coop and their kind of conflicts dealing with characters like Tyrone and Sean on the show, and kind of like the gang related violence that they deal with in their neighborhood. And I think those are different I don't want to say good situations. They're messy situations they put the characters in and allow them to sort of grow. And I think that you can't really get to those messy situations when you have a cast that wouldn't really exist in neighborhoods like that, or wouldn't really be in a neighborhood like that. So I think that those kind of that second and third thing on my list kind of go hand in hand. By dismantling the CW diversity, you get into messier situations, which makes for great storytelling and also a great way to relay different worldviews and different world problems. So I definitely commend All American on doing that, and the CW finally kind of drinking the Kool-Aid and getting on board with moving from predominantly white television casts. That's what I wanted to say. Now, getting into these certain situations, one thing I really like is they tackle certain issues. For those of you who watch TV as an escape, that's fine. That's totally valid. I completely agree with you. Sometimes I need to just watch, an episode of Friends, or I need to watch an episode of another television show to just kind of get away from it all. But this show does a really great job of tackling certain issues, and I like seeing that in television sometimes. Like in good television, I feel like it's done very skillfully and not very preachily. Now, does the show do that? It's up in the air. It's not super tactful at times. Sometimes it's a little forced, but I think they do an overall pretty good job of tackling a lot of issues in a short amount of time. One thing I really love is the dynamic of fatherhood here. When Corey James, who's Spencer James, the main character's father who's been away for a long time, comes back, I like that they play with the fatherhood dynamics of person who's blood versus a person who's acted like a father figure, which is like the Billy Baker character on the show to Spencer James, who's kind of taken him under his wing and been like a father figure and a coach to him. So I like that problem of tackling fatherhood and things like that. I think that's a very important issue. And I like, obviously the more high profile, I don't want to say high profile issues, but other issues that are played in it. Gang violence is a really big one. I would say one of my favorite episodes kind of predominantly focuses on gang violence and things within neighborhoods like Crenshaw, and I think that's very skillfully done by the show. It doesn't really get too gritty. Like I said earlier, they put characters in messy situations, not like gritty and intense like TV MA situations, if that makes sense, which is like a rating for very mature television. But it does a good job of kind of having those issues be there and doing them in a way where a younger audience might be able to just begin to see it, such as people who might be watching the show in middle school or in high school. Another thing I like is, and I mentioned this already with the Olivia Baker character, the addiction as a continuity. I love that. That is one of my favorite issues that they dealt on this television show, because I think addiction is done very poorly on television show. People with addictions in TV and film are always viewed as people with like diseases, with problems with this, and that it's like, oh, once you're over it, you're done. I hate that. It's like anything else. It's like managing your blood pressure. It's like managing if you have diabetes. It's a continual fight. You don't just get over it one day. It's something that I think people really rarely see. I think it's said in the show, I'm not sure if it's season 1 or season 2, but it said like every day I'm making a conscious effort not to go back to the pills and the alcohol. And I think that's really something that I like about the show, is it deals with addiction as continuity, not necessarily as a finite starting and stopping point for a problem. And I think that's very well done. And last one I'll say is racial profiling. Obviously, we've seen it done thousands of times. We have great episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine that are about that. We have fantastic series that are dedicated to racial profiling, like When They See Us. But I think the show did a good job of kind of introducing racial profiling to maybe a younger audience who won't understand where it's coming from. And I think that's important, is that even the shows that aren't necessarily meant for that are meant for younger audiences also tackle the issues as well. So I'm going to give them credit where credit is due. They did a great job. What I like is there's lots of playing with fire on the show too. That's my fifth point here. Lots of playing with fire. I say this about Cobra Kai as well. Not a lot of rights and wrongs, just a lot of craze. Like I said, I never really agreed with a single character on the show. I think there were a few characters that were above reproach on this television show, whereas on Cobra Kai there were none. But I think they play a lot with fire, and I think that's very, very interesting because they really push a lot of strings at once on each television show. Like, each episode feels very full, and each episode feels very, very much like pouring gasoline on matches and hoping they don't catch on fire, because that's exactly what happens at the end of the season. Every match just kind of catches on fire and everything kind of just goes to shit, which makes for great television. So I do like that. I do like how they play with fire, and I do like how they don't pull their punches on certain things. I think that's very well done. One thing I also like is the politics at the NCAA level as well as the HS recruitment level. I didn't know this. Friends have told me, the NCAA is a very interesting organization. I don't know the half of it, but I do like how they tackle things like the politics of it. And they don't pull their punches. That's what I like. They went full in. They were like, okay, cool, we're just gonna make a fake university and do the same thing, which is completely fine. And they did just that. They went to what recruiting looks like. They went to how colleges are kind of willing to play favorites if it means that they get better recruits on sports teams, as well as kind of mess around with the ideas of bribery and stuff at that level. I think that's very interesting. Now the show also has some things it doesn't do that great. Like all shows, there's no show above reproach. Even the classic shows like Breaking Bad and Lost obviously have things that they can work on, and the show is no different. For me, one thing I don't like is a classic infidelity thread. I really don't like seeing infidelity in television shows anymore because I think it's just lazy writing. I think it just naturally always happens. I would rather see a different love triangle, a love trapezoid, or like, I don't know, like a LGBTQ kind of aspect come into play, like the coming out stories and stuff like that. I really like that on Happiest Season. That film's awesome. But I'd rather see those things come up rather than infidelity, because it's such a done over and over and over and over again theme that it just feels very, very, very old school, very not. I don't know. Obviously, infidelity hasn't gone away. It's still an issue and stuff. That thing. So I guess I can see why television shows still stick to that as a plot thread, but to me it just feels like lazy writing on the part of the showrunners. I'm not a big fan of the infidelity thread. I think it's kind of just like there were already so many problems on the show. I would rather have seen those problems explored a little further rather than them throwing another thread with the infidelity thing. I think it just didn't really make sense to me. But again, I'd also like to say that this show is based on a true story, so it could be part of the true story, and it just adds more value in that way. So again, All American might be a little not subject to that criticism, but to me, I just don't like the infidelity thread, and I think they should begin to do different things. That's just me though. Anyway, other than that, something I said earlier that I liked is they put characters in mess situations and not gritty ones. That could also be a criticism. To me, I think, TV, obviously this is network television, so they're obviously not going to be able to do things that Netflix shows can do, like sex ed and stuff like that. But, when you put characters in the half messy situations, like what they did with some of the racial profiling episodes and stuff like that, you kind of don't see the seriousness and intensity of an issue, and that's not always great. Sometimes you need to see the seriousness and intensity of an issue to make sure that you understand that the issue is important. So I would kind of put the show on blast for that. Sometimes I feel like sometimes they undercut some issues because they're trying to address so many. So maybe they should focus a little more on the quality of the issues they're addressing rather than the quantity of the issues that they're addressing. Again, I still like the show. I want to make that clear. It's just these are the two things that I found a little like I could see them being both negatives and positives depending. So there were definitely some things I didn't love about the show as well. Now, for a favorite episode and favorite moments, there were a lot. There were a lot of great moments. From this show. I couldn't pick a favorite single one. So I did my top 5 moments instead of an episode. For me, I like in season 1 the ending, the call to action. I think every good pilot has to keep you engaged in somehow. When I saw the Arrow season 1 pilot, which I recently rewatched, it's kind of that, okay, there's a bigger picture. There's the island. There's things that we have to resolve about the island, and as well as this mission that his father gave him. And what I love is there's that call to action there. There's call to action Flash as well. All these TV shows have good calls to action. And what I love about this one is the little brother, whose name is, it's Dylan James, played by Jalen Hall, another great addition to the show. And I like that he kind of is the call to action, like, you need to do this. Like, I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's probably not your favorite thing to do, but you need to do this so that I know that I can also get out, and that people know that they can get out of the community and do good things on behalf of the community. And I really like that. I don't know what it was that scene just got me a little bit. I just really enjoyed the dynamic of seeing the family together like that, as well as the internal conflict of Spencer at that point in the show, where he kind of had that bad first experience at Beverly and was looking for any reason to escape, and his brother was like, nope, you're not getting the reason to escape. I need you to do this, and if it's not for you, I need you to do this for me. I need you to do this for the community. And I like how he did that. And that leads into my next favorite moment, which happened in episode 9, Community Burden. And this is an interesting one, because I think it shows the differences between Billy Baker's character as well as Spencer James's characters, in that you kind of see them both on different sides. They're both prodigies. They're both football legends, so to speak, within their communities, but they have different ways of going about it. Billy Baker wanted to completely forget about his community, whereas Spencer James wants to come back and continually be a part of his community and continue to fight. And they both have different opposite views on this. Like, you don't have to represent the community all the time. Where Spencer's kind of like, I am the community. Like, everything I do represents my community. And I like that dynamic, because I think it's the same thing that all people who look like they're foreign kind of suffer from. It's like, oh, where are you from? Like, oh no, where are you really from? Like, oh, like, can you tell me about Indian or Chinese or Korean or Malaysian culture or whatever? And I love how that's like very representative of that same conflict, but in a different way. It's almost like, what do you represent, and what do you, like, can you, like, where do you draw the line? Like, do you represent everything about your culture? Do you represent certain things about your culture? How much of your culture do you represent? And I think that's obviously, different people will draw the line in different ways, but I like how this show kind of took two opposite stances and then brought them into this middle gray area and let people pick a spectrum where they felt comfortable. Some people are really going to disagree with Billy Baker, and some people like me might see Billy Baker's opinion has some validity. So I think that's definitely a good well, I don't want to say good, I'll keep saying good, but it was a fantastic thing to see on a television show like this. Now, my next favorite also comes from episode 9, and it's Spence Has Somewhere Better to Be. And this is probably, like, I don't really cry or tear up during television shows, but I think this scene might have gotten me a little bit. And it happened all when after Sean passes away. He gets shot in a drive-by, and you go through this whole thing of, like, Spencer kind of coming to terms with Sean's death, and he's mad at Sean and Coop for getting kind of involved in these things. And at the end, the character Tyrone comes up to him and is like, yeah, he never let us ride with, he never let you ride with us, or he never let us come near you because he said you were the pride of Crenshaw. He said, you needed to focus on football, and that you couldn't be with us. You couldn't be a sort of, part of a gang because of that. And I love how they show that, like, the person who might have tormented you or bullied you a little bit or put you in a position to necessarily not feel welcome at certain times was actually the person who was trying to protect you the most and make sure that you could represent the community. And I love that, and I found that really heartwarming. And I love how they show it in flashbacks with the same line that he always said to kind of torment Spencer. It's the same line that probably saved his life at certain points. So I found that really, really hard to watch sometimes, especially when they're at the funeral and it's happening all at once. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I forgot what song it's scored to, but that also got me. It's another great, I think it was River by Leon Bridges, and that song also gets me a lot. So very, very well played to the people who produce and direct All American. Good on you guys. So my fourth favorite one was We All Need to Stop This. And this was in episode 10, and it was kind of when they're having this birthday party in the park, and two sides of a gang kind of come out, and they're threatening violence there. Guns are kind of pointed out, and Spencer is standing up to them, and obviously his mom is worried. The community is kind of like, yo, come back. Like, they're trying to get people out of there. They want to make sure no one gets hurt. But I like that speech that he gives where he's like, killing each other's not the answer. And I like where he goes with that, because I think that's really important, is to, at the end of the day, like, whenever something happens to a community or in a community that's negative, whether it's a school shooting or violence of any kind, I think it's important that you understand that the community is hurting as well. And I like how he brings that into better sense. It's kind of like seeing a sermon at certain points during the episode. It's like his whole Shakespearean monologue in a certain way, but I like how he covered it, and I like how he went through and kind of dismantled the situation in a way where no one got hurt, as well as they were able to kind of talk about the problems in the community, which he had been doing for 2 or 3 episodes up until that point without any traction. So I like this moment a lot because of that. And the last one that I liked, I've talked about addiction coverage a lot. Episode 11, it's the We Had Better Plans scene, and this one I like a lot because it goes into that addiction as continuity thing that I really love this show does. And what I love about it here is when she's picking up her medallion and she sees her parents and she's going up to them and she's like, oh, I thought you had this, I thought you had this. It's like, we had better plans, we came here instead, and they spend time as a family, and I like that. I think you can't really, like, what I like is that the shows, you can't really heal in a vacuum. You need the people around you to be supportive of things. And yeah, you can pretend like something didn't happen, like they kind of pretend that the OD that Olivia had gone through in flashbacks during that whole episode didn't happen. But I do really, really enjoy that they went into the moments and said, okay, no, we gotta go into the uncomfortable places, we gotta be together as we go through this, because if your family's not behind you, and if your family's not there for the ugly stuff, or they're only there for the good stuff, and they're not there for the ugly stuff, it's not really a family. It's not really, you don't really feel their presence, or you don't really feel their warmth if they're not there for that. So I really, really enjoyed that scene as well. I thought it was very touching, and really pleased me as well. So I think with all that being said, I really like All American. I've seen both seasons. I'm really, really looking forward to season 3, which is coming out, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, I think that's a wrap on season 1 of All American. All right, guys, that finishes up another great episode of TV Tuesdays. I hope you guys are enjoying the content we're putting out. There's going to be a lot more of this. I've seen a lot of television, and I have a lot of television I want to talk about. Anyway, this has been Off the Deep End, the show where we take a deep dive into pretty much anything we can get our hands on. If you liked what you see and you want to see more, please like. If you want to keep following us for more episodes, please follow us on Instagram, follow us on Spotify, follow us on YouTube. We really, really appreciate the love. And as always, if you disagree with me or you agree with me, I'd like to hear about it. I like to know what you guys are thinking, or if you guys have suggestions for TV I should watch and look over. I really, really, really love hearing that stuff too. So please shoot any suggestions over. You can Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Until next time, this has been Off the Deep End, and I will see you guys next time.